Okay. All right, here we go. Let's get Will in. Thanks everybody for coming. We'll just let people come into the live. We start a little early. I'm just going to try to get Will on shortly. Hey, Anthony, Ian. Thumbs up if you guys can hear me okay. Aaron, how's it going? Good. Charlie and Steven. Okay, I can see myself here. See if we can get Will on here. Okay, Will is watching. I'm gonna send you a request, Will. We're gonna try something different here. Adding. Look at that. Might actually work. And I
Did
can
it?
see you.
You can see me?
You're sideways, but I can see you.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Let's fix that.
Look at that.
How about now?
We're both in frame.
Brilliant.
And I can hear you and see you fine. All right.
And I can't see you, and that's exactly how this goes, isn't it?
Oh, I think I'll check the feed. I'm pretty sure they can see us both, but I got it right
Hopefully
here.
everybody can see everybody here, but yeah, I can't see you, Galen, as per usual. So, oh, there's my lovely wife. Hi, honey.
Cool.
So if you make
Okay.
nasty faces at me, I'll just have to rely on the people in the comments to let me know.
Perfect. Okay.
Perfect.
So I'm just making sure I can see the comments. Oh, we got a good amount of people, 10 people on so far. We're still a little early. Let's see if I can click to expand. Hold on, I just gotta refresh the Facebook page.
All good. We're getting some messages here from people saying that they can see both of us, so that's good news. And hopefully we can get the thumbs up that everybody can hear both of us as well.
Yeah, I think we're good on the audio front now.
Lovely.
Okay, good. Okay, I'm muted over here and I can see the live chat. There we go.
Epic.
Okay.
Ian says, where's Palm when you need him? Yeah, right? The technical difficulties don't just stop with Palm, I'll tell you that.
I think we're in good shape. Okay, how's it going?
It's going good, buddy. I feel like I only just spoke to you an hour ago.
Yeah, had a few conversations leading up to here, so hopefully we're somewhat prepared.
I would think so.
Little better audio video this time than last, and I actually have a tripod with my camera set up, so makes things a little easier.
I've got the same thing with one of those halo-like things, so it makes me look like I may have seen some sun, but I've been locked in my basement mostly.
I got one of them. I got one of those around here, but I'm relying on some natural light, which is still not going to improve my features.
Your complexion, yeah.
There you go.
Right on.
Paul's here. Okay, we got 14. We're after 3. Do you want to get it started?
Let's make it happen, man. Let's get going here. We got quite a few people hopping in. So, hello, Team Pallatrax. Will here. Galen up there.
Cool. Yeah, and our agenda today, if you didn't see Palm's pose, is we're going to talk a little bit about wild river carp, because both Will and I have a vast experience targeting river carp over here in Canada, as well as some underwater experiences we both had and fish behavior, which is always an interesting topic. And then we're going to talk about your guide service, so Peterborough Carping Guides. Then we'll have a Q&A, and then we also have some questions for each other. So there should be plenty of content or plenty of topics to discuss.
This is gonna go over an hour.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a long time. Our 10-minute conversations usually turn into half an hour
Yeah,
plus. So
for sure.
here we go. Buckle up, kiddos.
Yeah. So why don't we'll start with the river topic, and I guess I can give a bit of a brief overview for people. So both Will and I live in the Peterborough area. One of the big main tributaries or rivers that runs through Peterborough is the Otonabee River. You've heard us talk about it before. It's quite a large system, and it drains a massive area. Like you're looking at almost like half the size of a province where the headwaters are. And then so I think it was like PEI. I think the Burnt River itself, which is another big tributary, is like a quarter of the size of PEI as the watershed. So there's so much water that goes through the system. So we get a lot of flow through here. There's a lot of dams, so the water is kind of managed by one of our government agencies to kind of move water around so people aren't getting flooded out. So that impacts when generally we can start fishing. So we're looking at, I know you've caught carp in the Otonabee in April, but it's
Yeah.
generally in tributaries that lead to the Otonabee. But then we generally start around that kind of May, first week of May, just depending on that current. And then things start kicking off in the lakes as the ice is usually off, plants start coming up, and water starts warming up. So
That's true. And then we also have some sanctuaries too that restrict us because even though the fish might be there, we're not allowed to play in there until
yeah,
the second Saturday of May, which is often little sanctuaries because of the walleye hatching and whatnot. They like to give a little buffer in the currents versus in the lakes because
yeah,
obviously the currents things take a little longer to warm up and the fish have to work against the ice melt to try to move upstream and whatnot. So yeah, there's definitely the river is that place that we go to, once things start warming up and it becomes kind of our focus from say probably I'd say guaranteed by middle of May to, July, August, we're playing in the rivers mostly.
yeah.
But we'll bounce back and forth between sort of the more static waters and the moving waters, which is
Okay.
it's something that we enjoy because we like to fish canals too. We like to fish the lakes. We like to fish the bays. So yeah, there's gonna be a lot to talk about here. I hope you guys are
Yeah.
ready because we got a lot of experience with fishing the
Yeah,
rivers. So you
it's
guys
really
are
is
excited.
nice having that variety because we even have like still canal systems that they use to bring boats up through the lock so they don't have to go up through the main channel. There's dam sections that we use for power generation where the carp are caught in between. So it almost acts like a mini or almost like a UK water because the carp can't leave. So there's certainly some areas we've targeted before that we've had recaptures, we've named a few fish here and there, and it's been quite special kind of over the last, well, for me, it's 16 years targeting these fish and getting to know some of these swims. And you've probably fished more spots in this town than anybody I know.
Yeah, I mean, I've had the pleasure of when I was in university, I had a lot of time at my disposal. When I was finished my work, I would just, go for a little walk around, find a spot. Oh, this looks promising. We'll go and we'll try fishing this sometime. So yeah, I mean, from April till October, November, I fished for carp here in Peterborough and the Kawarthas. So yeah,
Okay,
and I mean,
got a
you, oh,
well, quick question for you. Well, so when we got Joe asking when does your season finish? So generally I haven't caught too many carp after October, like Halloween. Um,
yeah,
but usually that's just because of the daylight savings time. So I'm not necessarily getting out after work and then I'm living on weekends. But I know you have continued on through November, so maybe you can let us know how you did in the
yeah.
cooler
I mean,
months.
I've uh, I've definitely caught fish into mid-November. Um, by that point, the temperatures are getting really cold. And what's ironic is the bite generally comes late in the evening, so well into the dark. That's what I've found. Rivers, lakes, it doesn't seem to matter. There's been plenty of times where it's mid-November, it's like 11 o'clock at night. It's been dark for 5, 6 hours, and the fish suddenly just turn on, and you get one or two bites, and then it just goes dead quiet after
Yeah.
that, right? But you have to pick your swims. You have to kind of know what you're looking for. And, I find that the current seams in the rivers obviously provide a nice little place where the fish can kind of come in and find food that is opportunistically dropped back into the back eddies. And then on the lakes, I look for long, shallow flats, where the fish can go to a place that's been sunning for most of the day and maybe a little bit out of the main wind, maybe a little bit of a wind coming across to oxygenate it, but it's not getting constantly pulverized. And then they tend to see, like, they kind of hang out there. And then if you can get a rig within proximity to them, you can sometimes sneak out a bite too. But yeah, you got to really limit the amount of food you're putting out, because by that point, if you're feeding for one fish, you're actually feeding for like 5, because they're
Yeah.
just so much slower. The metabolism drops right off.
And
So
then in contrast, in the spring, we can really fill it in because the fish are really putting on that feedback as water temperatures come up. You can even start seeing, as kind of May hits, the naturals really start coming out of the cobble and gravel. I even
oh
have
yeah,
that on film where I've got like mayflies, or sorry, caddisflies. So the caddis are the ones that make the little cocoons around themselves out of whatever material that they can find on the bottom. You can see them starting to come up from underneath. I've even had that on film as the carp start to get active. And
so
things
cool.
that we'll target in the spring too is, yeah, that current seam is huge. So anytime you can find that slack water in the river is generally where food will settle. Things, just any debris will settle, so the fish even can get out of the current by sitting in there. And there's usually a really good spot to set up and pre-bait and get some fish moving for a session.
Indeed,
Uh,
indeed.
okay. We got lots of people coming. We got 17 so far. Hey, Simon,
Oh,
we
hey.
Mr. Pomeroy is taking. He's watching at the moment, and big thanks to us. So thanks, Pom, for having us on. And we have Ian Brookman. So have you or have you? Have we talked about trotting for carp? I
Doing
know.
some trotting.
Yeah, last time I think we spoke about doing a bit of float fishing, but I haven't personally in a very long time just like sent a worm and a weight down the river after carp. It doesn't necessarily, the big river doesn't necessarily I guess allow us to do that unless we can really see them in the margins.
There's just too many things to bycatch, right? Like, I'm actually
Yeah.
working right now. I'm doing some seminar work. I'm building a fishing tips and tricks seminar for my students. And I was ironically, I just decided I wanted to know how many fish were actually just in the vicinity of Peterborough. You probably knew this number better than I did, but I didn't know it was almost 40 different species of fish. I
Yeah,
had
something
no
like that.
idea.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
It
a
was
good
like,
diverse amount of species.
whoa. Yeah, I was blown away, right? Because I start, like, you start going down the rabbit hole, and, like, yeah, you find the minnow species, and the minnows aren't going to necessarily be able to get you, but you get into, like, the fall fish, you get into the sucker species that we have here, and those can most certainly be a bycatch, a welcome bycatch, mind
Hmm.
you. But you also have smallmouth, and we're restricted as to what we can use for baits with multiple rods,
Yeah.
because of the fact that, yeah, like, there's multiple seasons for different species here. It's not like a river season, it opens up and then everything is allowed to be fished. It's more like, we have, okay, the walleye open, the trout open first, then the walleye, and then we walk our way down to muskie, bass, so on and so forth. So you have to be careful what you're actually putting into the river at a given time, because when you're trying to fish for one species, if there's a chance that you could have a bycatch, you want to be kind of aware of that, because you don't want to be caught using worms in an area where there's a lot of catfish, say,
Yeah.
if the catfish aren't in season yet, right? Because that's another species that also has the channel cats have an opening season as well. Holy cow, we got a lot of people coming into the comments here and
Yeah,
dropping comments on this. So,
we got some great questions. So yeah, we do use a lot of maize in our fishing, a lot of
oh
particle.
yeah,
So Mike Sullivan has a good question about kind of how much we use, and we definitely do prepare it in advance. So what I like to do is
okay.
keep my maize in. I've boiled it in the past, but generally I'll just fill up a bunch of buckets full of hot water, and then whatever scent I want to add into it, and then just let it ferment for a few weeks until I can crush it in my fingers. It gets a nice ethanol gross smell, and that's when you know it's kind of done, starts bubbling up. And it
Yeah,
tends to work
when you
very
open
well.
when the bucket lid opens itself and it offends
Yeah.
you, that's when you know it's absolutely perfect. Yeah, particle, Mike. It is actually, to think that you could actually feed these fish an HNV, or any boilie for that matter. If you think you can actually turn them off of their naturals, that you could possibly put in enough food to take them off the naturals, you're absolutely out to lunch, right?
Yeah.
There's so much water. There's so many species all competing for these foods, food sources. So, if you were to put out pellets, if you were to put out, boilies, it would cost you an arm and a leg, and it wouldn't likely make a difference. Do I think that maybe you could select for specific fish if you follow a certain baiting regimen? Like Galen, you and I have chatted about certain baiting practices that if you were to offer different sized baits,
Yep.
including some that are almost jawbreaker sized, 30 plus mils, hardened baits with a lot of agabalum and stuff like that, to make it really, really firm. You might be able to select what fish are able to take your baits, but in a given day, you could throw in a bunch of 14 millers and a bunch of 10-pound carp would just come through and clean them out in about
Yeah.
5 minutes. So
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense for us to feed a lot with boilies. We're definitely more into particles for sure.
Yeah, we could definitely play the game of numbers and trying to get some of these bigger fish. Selecting out big fish can be kind of hit and miss. I've done it where I've used like two 20 mil homemade boilies and filmed it underwater, and I'm catching like 14-pound fish on a
Yeah.
big bait like that with a size 4 curve shank grip. So I'll put that video up on the team page. It was shared with the Canadian Carp Society, and so I haven't put it public yet, but I'll just check it on the team page. I'll have a link just to kind of show just how big some of these baits these fish will pick up. That a lot of our carp have just gigantic mouths, so it's
Well,
like you
yeah,
can really
definitely. That's something I've noticed as well. I remember when I was on pads in the UK, I was at Yateley Pads, and I remember when I caught my 18-pounder. Wasn't the biggest fish in the lake, surely by a country mile. The biggest one was double that and then some, which I saw get caught, which was pretty special. But the mouth on that 18-pounder compared to the 18-pounders back here in the home country is there's a very noticeable difference, right? The difference between fitting a snooker ball and fitting my fist,
yeah.
right? So it's
Like
quite a difference.
I've even seen events where we've chucked out method balls to bring them in with our particle, and I've seen it on camera where they've picked up, like sucked up a whole method ball at once, and it's like the size of a golf ball. I'll put that up on the team page, so I'll try to make a note of that. But I couldn't
That's it.
believe
You
it.
have to find that video. That is a great
Yeah,
one.
I couldn't believe how big of a piece of method ball that thing sucked up. Oh, we got some good questions. Adam, yes, we do have some crave baits. We have used them with success in the past. Problem is we have to use it on one rod, and I can't chum with it. So it'd be a crave pop-up if we're doing that. What else we got here? Mike Sullivan, he says, have you prepared it as you mentioned by soaking it for a long period of time? He said that brewing moonshine. Yes, it does smell
Yeah.
like moonshine. I'm sure it has a great alcohol content that I'm sure actually you could test because I know you brew a lot of mead and wine yourself.
Yeah, I like mead. That's a thing of mine for sure. Yeah, I've definitely put a bubbler on one of my corn buckets before and watched it go all day for a couple solid hours. That way, yeah, that's really kicking it up, right? The natural yeast in there, creating the CO2. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and James has a question going on with that about like, is there restrictions on the types of natural baits that we can use? And the restriction is that based on our the regulations we have, we can only use natural baits on one rod. It has to be the hook bait. It can't be mixed into like a method or a paste. It has to be a part of that actual hook bait. It can't come off, essentially. That's what it comes down to. And any free offering cannot be natural based, unfortunately.
Yep.
Otherwise, we would use that probably almost exclusively because
Well, yeah,
it
because I
does
mean,
have a
like,
huge benefit.
I've definitely in the past when we were using one rod, I definitely made up, and this was before the rule was really hammered down. I
Yeah.
definitely ground up some worms in a blender like an absolute maniac, and then added breadcrumbs and quick oats to that, and I made up a method with it. And I was catching fish left, right, and
I
center, and I
bet.
couldn't stop it. Couldn't stop it. Right, it was great. And basically the leftover worm juices I had, I was just dipping baits in that and flicking that out, and it was going on the drop, right? But I also had a pretty big pod of fish that used to just come by this one bay all the time. So I mean, it was like almost guaranteed that you could throw a bare hook out there some days and they would just smash it. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was those were different times as well. Things have definitely changed around here too, and the fish
Yeah.
have become more pressured and become
And
more aware of things to look for. So
a lot to do with that kind of rule change was because they're offering or allowing us the privilege of using 3 rods, which was a huge process. It was like a 10-year process of back and forth with our local government to make it
Yep.
happen. And there was a lot of Ontario and even Quebec carp anglers that kind of helped with that process. But the idea is that because you're using 3 lines, people didn't want, they didn't want you to, I guess, use like 3 worms and then have bycatch, all these different
Yeah.
bycatches. So you want to be specifically targeting carp because every other species you can only use 1 rod for. So it's just,
Yep.
I get where they're coming from, and I get too, there's a lot of like import issues. We have some strict regulations about getting certain baits and things like that over here. So,
Yep.
yeah, anyway,
Anybody.
it is what it is, but we make do and we still catch fish. So that's all that really matters.
I fill my boots every day, you know what I mean? So it's all good.
Okay, so let's get back to rivers. Well, now what is, I guess I guess really a lot of times when we're fishing the river, it just to give you guys a sense of an idea what the bottom's like. It's either a lot of gravel, it's a lot of cobble. You do get some sand. We do get some weeds depending on the area, but sometimes these weed beds are very seasonal. So sometimes they'll be there, sometimes they're not. A lot has to do with kind of the flow and how much actual loose substrate there is for the plants to actually grow. But I guess what kind of rigs do you usually focus on when you're kind of out in a session? Just generally when you're out on the river. Like
So
what's your
I
go-to
definitely
setup?
like to throw. I like to throw. A feature finding lead doesn't, or feature finding weight, whatever, doesn't really make sense in the rivers because you cast it out, you bring it back, and just it going through all the currents and tumbling and twisting, and it generally you can actually get a good understanding of what's going on down there. So what I actually do, it's insane, but I actually will throw it a weight with a hook, like an actual rig on there, and I'll actually bring it back and I'll drag it to see if I come back with any vegetation at all. So I'll throw it
Hmm.
like basically what would be a bottom bait rig and let it drag across the bottom. And that'll give me an idea as to whether or not I'm going to be able to present, in that area where I've been casting to and kind of feeling it come down, right? And if I'm feeling some gravel, okay, but gravel doesn't always mean just gravel, right? And that's something that we've kind of seen on underwater footage where,
Yep.
you may have little patches of grass and greenery here and there. You don't want your hook point compromised, right? So oftentimes we're relying on method, not because it's just a great way to attract fish, but it's also a way for us to keep the rig and keep the hook from actually getting dulled when it hits
Yeah.
the bottom, right? So we have this little pile of food for the fish to find, and so long as it makes it down the descent and makes it down to the bottom, right? That rig generally won't get picked up and get pushed out by the current again. It's usually down lower. It actually kind of stabilizes out a little bit. And so yeah, like I like to focus on like a snowman rig or something that will break up the mundane. So if we put out some particle, we've got the method.
Hmm.
I do believe that something with a little bit of visibility to it is a handy tool. And you and I both know that yellow seems to be a carp's favorite flavor around here.
Yes, very much
We
so.
it doesn't matter what it tastes like as long as it's yellow, it seems to go. And so we definitely, like if I'm running a snowman, it's going to be something with a natural colored bottom bait and a high vis yellow or pink or something like that. Um, as long as the bottom's clear. Now, if I'm fishing something where the bottom's not so clear, I like to fish something like a little pop-up rig, like a little German rig or something like that. And I tend to find that when I'm fishing that situation, it's because I'm off on a margin a little bit. And the margins tend to have a little bit of sediment and silt that's pushed along the side of the bank. And when I'm fishing that's often where you find the weed edge too. Is like just along the edge of the margin, you just got a little bit of weed there and a little bit of a wall. So sometimes I'll fish on the inside of that wall because, believe it or not, even when it's July and it's 30 plus degrees Celsius outside, because there's that constant flow of water, 2 feet deep, you'll still see big carp swimming around in really shallow water. And I've got some great videos of that. Maybe I'll post that up where I think I had a 25 plus swimming with like its dorsal spine was almost out of the water,
Yeah.
pushing upstream underneath a tree, a little bit of a rock pile dropping down. It was pretty wicked to see. But anyhow, so yeah, like I don't shy away from pop-ups, and I know that there's lots of theories and lots of opinions on pop-ups not working in the river. I used to run pop-ups like that on hinge stiff rigs in the river, and I used to absolutely
Yeah,
destroy on them, right? And I think it was at a time where I was not looking for numbers anyway. I was looking for those selective fish that were coming in,
right.
taking one or two things and leaving. And I honestly, I was finding that I was getting a lot of the bigger fish on those pop-ups. Now that could have been just, complete
Yeah,
coincidence. Obviously, I made a lot of assumption back then, but I was catching a lot of big fish back in the day, and I still do catch big fish on pop-ups. And I find that it's you have to run what you're confident in, and yeah, I focus on using big, heavy hooks, strong hooks. You want to use your fours in the river.
yeah,
Sixes are fine too if you're fishing and it doesn't have too much flow. But if it's flowing hard, you need something a little stronger because
yeah.
you're going to be holding on for a little while. So yeah, from a rig point, that's definitely where I go. What about for you, buddy? What are you
Yeah.
talking about?
So we, if I'm fishing swims that I go to regularly, what I've done in the past is, and because I've had the luxury, is if I've actually got the snorkel and mask out and kind of swam around just to get a sense of kind of what we're up against. Obviously, snags will kind of change year to year depending on the flow of the river and if you get a lot of debris, big trees, things like that coming down. But generally, I'm fishing a lot of margins, and I kind of stick to that like max, like a 25-yard cast. So I can get out, kind of figure out where those kind of the marginal shelf is. If there's like an area where kind of sand or a nice flat area has been created by the current, there's a lot of clay underneath all this cobble and gravel. So sometimes you get a nice clay patch with gravel mixed in, which is really easy to present a bait on top of. The difficulties lie in actually depending on the current, is placing your bait out. So we use a lot of bait spoons or a spot, but you can't always guarantee you're putting your rig on top of bait depending on how much drift there is. And having that method approach or pack bait approach, at least or even PBA, at least you have a nice bit of offering around your hook bait. And I
Huge.
think the last I think since 2021, I've been using like Palm's Steam Link rig, and generally just because it's so easy for me to tie up, and then I'll just, if I need pop up to go up higher, I'll just strip back the materials, the coating on the Steam Link, and I just keep it very simple that way. And I've had success in caught fish. There's a lot of different rigs that work on this system. Dan and Brendan use different things too. So, and I've caught lots of fish on pop-ups. I've also one section of river we fish. The fish have been pressured a lot, and they don't really like pop-up movement or bait movement. So I've been burned a few times reviewing footage where I've had fish eating every single morsel of bait around my hook bait, and my pop-ups just doing this because the current had picked up mid-session, and it's literally just going back and forth. Obviously, it's just kind of the day of. It's not always the case because I've caught tons of fish using pop-ups, but it definitely has messed with my head where at least having multiple use of rods, you can have a bottom bait on one and a pop up on the other, and kind of figure out what they're taking that day. We also use a lot of sweet corn when we can, when there's not a lot of I guess not pest species, but a lot of other species that will rip it apart. Panfish really like to rip apart sweet corn, and we have swims that have a lot of gobies too, and they'll just start moving your rig around like this. So it's not
Oh,
it's not always the best. They're
nightmare
starting to
fuel.
really infiltrate certain swims on the river, so it just depends. But yeah. So, and then, a question for you, Will. So, this was a huge educational experience for me. I dealt with a lot of hook pulls through my journey through carp fishing. I think for the first at least probably 9 years, I struggled because I was using braid in the current without any kind of shock leader. Until we had a conversation down at our one swim because I kept losing fish to the current. And you mentioned, oh, you should just add a mono leader or fish straight mono. And that's exactly what I did. And I can tell you my catch rate just went through the roof because I was actually landing fish. So
Oh
getting
man.
away from braid was huge for me. And I know people think I'm crazy. Some of the Canadian carp anglers just want to use that like heavy duty, like 60 plus braid everywhere they go. But where we're fishing in the river, if the braid hits any of the rocks that have zero muscles, it just breaks like that, or you just end up with a lot of hook pulls because so much there's just so much strength in those fish if they decide to go sideways in the current.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, like It was a learning curve for me as well, right? Like, I mean, I think from about 2018 onward, I was exclusively mono, and what it came down to was like I was bouncing around between lakes, rivers, and whatnot. And when I was fishing some of the weedier lakes, I found that yeah, the braid would help to really cut through those weeds, and you could like you could sometimes steer fish away with just that extra pressure. They weren't getting away with it, but I was experiencing a lot of hook pulls back then. And then eventually I kind of transitioned to putting on about 6 feet of mono or a fluorocarbon. I think generally at that point I was using a mono, like a 30-pound mono leader.
Yep.
And I was noticing, yeah, there was a significant improvement to the to hook, like the lack of, there was less hook pulls, and I was still able to cut through those weeds when, if the fish took off. I had 6 feet of mono, but then there was braid behind it that was cutting things up. But at that knot, I was getting a lot of things that were hanging up and, whatnot. And like if I was in the river, debris would float down, would hit that, slide down to the knot, and then it would just get stuck there, right? And then you suddenly had your line was coasting and going downstream and whatnot, and that was an absolute pain in the butt.
Yep.
So in 2018, I just decided to like try mono. I'm like the Brits are doing it, and I heard something else from a friend of mine too, saying that get on the copolymers, get on the monos. You'll find that in the rivers, braid being flat, it will catch things easier because it's a flat shape as opposed to something that's like cylindrical, and so things will get stuck on and it will just wrap around it like this as opposed to sliding off of it. And I went, oh, interesting. And he said, and braided lines pick up particulate matter really well, and it'll actually, like, you'll see it glowing in the water. And I actually saw it happen at one swim in particular where siltier, not sandy but siltier, and I watched as the line started to almost glow from all the silt just like
Yep.
resting on it.
I
It
can
was
see
really
that.
interesting, and so I was like, okay. But then I didn't see that same problem with mono. So yeah, since then I've been on monos and copolymers. I tried fluorocarbon for a bit, absolutely hated it. Um, as a main line, that is.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
now it's like I run the gamma line. I love gamma, but this may surprise a lot of people that Berkeley big game, baby. Berkeley big game. I still use Berkeley big game. There was a trilene sensation back in the day too. It was in a 17 pound. They don't make it anymore, but that was my favorite line for quite a while. I got a huge spool of it, about I think it was a 3,000 yard spool. It was like one of those monstrous spools, and I used that for quite a long time. And yeah, it was. I was sad when I went through all of it, but it was really thin. Um, but it really had a good stretch to it too. It was really nice stuff at
Yeah.
17 pounds. But yeah,
Super
like Berkeley big
affordable
game.
too.
There's nothing wrong with Berkeley. I think people should really stop trying to spend their exorbitant amounts of money. Like Berkeley, yeah, it sometimes it gets a little curly and a little silly, but I'll tell you what, when I put it on my rods for my clients, and I trust that stuff to bring in 30+ pound fish with a 15 pound or a 17 pound, like in the rivers, I'm not gonna shy away from that price
So
for a product that actually breaks and punches well above its price point for
yeah,
sure. So
when you're spooling up big pit reels, multiple for having clients, yeah, you definitely need that price point to make it affordable because line's expensive these days.
yeah, braid. I remember when I used to spool up with braid, and it was
Yeah,
like I can't afford this lifestyle, right? I have to
yeah.
take out another job, right? Especially with these big 10,000 plus bait runners and big pits that I'm running, right? I'm
Yeah,
like, yeah, I can't afford that. So
yeah,
yeah, mono was so much cheaper, and it's got so many virtues, right? It's more it doesn't refract the same way in water, right? So it's a little bit more see through. It's a little bit harder for the fish to spot. It's safer for the fish. It's more abrasion resistant than braid. Like the mono is where it's at. Like if you're in the
yeah,
river and you're using anything but mono, you're out of your mind because you're doing yourself a great disservice.
yeah. And I find obviously like I've had so many talks to Palm about different lines and everything. I understand why he wants everybody to have access to good line like Gamma because it is important. And we've definitely put a lot of different lines through the ringer out here, and we do get a lot of stretch and a lot of UV, I guess, weakness because it's sitting in the sun and everything else. But I generally on my main three rods, I think I have Gamma, and then I've started to use the Gamma 20-pound fluorocarbon for a liter, and that's my general use system, and it works just fine for me. If I'm getting into an area with zebra mussels, then I'll up that leader material. Because there's certain spots that have a lot more zebra mussels than others that
Oh,
we fish.
Jesus.
We have
There's places where it's as bad as glass. It's
here,
horrible.
here's this it's good. We were talking about this earlier, Marys, with some of the questions we had. Ian was asking about what sort of test curve rods are we using?
Ooh, that is a great question. You can answer
Yeah,
yours first, Galen.
yeah.
What's in your pocket?
So when I started carp fishing, there really wasn't that much access to, I guess, a lot of carp rods. So I kind of got what I could get, and I had a very cheap Daiwa. They're Mad Dragons. They're just very simple blanks, but they were 2.75 test curve rods, which actually was probably beneficial to me without me even realizing it. I just kind of got what I could get, but having that extra I guess give in the rod was very handy with fishing the rivers and the current, but I still had issues with braid using those rods. And then since I've upgraded to a 3 pound test curve, which I actually find is quite nice. That's like the general I guess test curve rods that are pretty common with Canadian carp anglers. I don't see too many people going above that unless they're like on the St. Lawrence casting like million miles or whatever, but
Yeah.
just depends. But yeah, what about yourself?
Well, I have a mixed bag, right? So I have I think my smallest weights are probably 2.5, and I go all the way up to a 3.5. I've got two sets of 3.5s, but in the rivers, the most important thing, and this is something that a lot of people need to recognize, is that there are 3.5 pound test curve rods and there are 3.5 pound test curve rods. There are 3 pound test curve rods and there are 3 pound test curve rods. And the quality of the blank and the speed of the blank. This is something that is really important. You can have a fast action 3 pound test curve that will not do the same job as a medium speed 3.25 or 3.5.
Right.
So like test curve nearly means how far until the tip is 90 degrees to the butt. If you have a tip to the butt at 90 degrees, but it's like this versus like this, you have a fast versus a medium versus a slow action, right? So
Right.
in the rivers, I always recommend, and I've played so many 3 pound test curve rods. You want something that fights really parabolically. So regardless if it's a faster 2.5 or a slower 3.5, if you aim for a moderate 3, you're probably doing it right in terms
Yep.
of speed, because the fish in the rivers, they turn around and they go on these ridiculous, they turn into a plywood sheet and just drift downriver like a sail, right? So when that happens, if you don't have enough rod to accept that, or it's going at too aggressive and too fast, you're tearing flesh. Even with grips hooks,
Yeah.
you're
Yep.
tearing flesh. And so, the best thing you can do is have a rod that's going to accept those lunges, especially right at your feet too, with grace.
Yep.
I think the misunderstanding is big fish, big current, need strong rod. You do need a strong rod, absolutely, but a 3 pound test curve like you have, Galen, is
Yep.
perfectly fine. All of my rods are parabolic in their fight. Even my Atrex 3.5s, that's because they're also a very high quality blank, the
Yeah.
Atrex.
Yeah.
And so it plays really nicely. It's got a slightly faster, it's a more like a medium fast action. So for a cast, like I'm not hitting 200 yards with it. But I'm hitting that 140, 150 mark, and that gives me more opportunities on the lake. But in the rivers, I don't need more than 3.
Yeah.
Right, I've caught plenty of mid 30s on 3 pound test curve rods, and I'm very confident that it does the job. We look at things like salmon fishermen and trout fishermen. They're using noodle rods. Like these are ultralight blanks, light blanks that are 9+ feet long, and
Yeah.
they're candy caning these things in half and bringing in 20 pound steelhead. Right. So I mean, it doesn't. You don't need a heavy action rod, a
Right.
heavy fast action rod, just because you're going up against heavy current. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You actually are going to be playing these fish for a significantly longer period of time, and you're going to want to do you're going to want to play those fish out because, like I always say, there's the green and mean zone, the yellow mellow, and the red dead zone. If you fight that fish and you bring it in too quickly, and you've somehow managed to bring that fish in quickly with a fast action rod, it'll go in that net and it's going to beat the crap out of you, right? So it's been fighting through oxygenated water, constantly pumping over its gills. It's going to come to the net and come into the landing mat, and it's going to be an absolute nightmare to deal with. And if you fight a fish for too long, obviously, you're always putting a fish in a state of danger if you're fighting it for too long. But generally in the rivers, that's not as much of an issue as it is in the lakes because it's oxygenated still. Still could cause stress, but not nearly the same amount. But if you get them in that yellow mellow zone, right, they're going to be perfectly fine. Give them a minute on the mat, water down in the net, water down the landing mat, and then you can get your pretty little picture and send it on its way. So yeah, definitely medium action. Don't go into the fast action. There's no point. Definitely test curve versus take it and actually get a feel for it. Like test curves, 3.5 doesn't always mean 3.5 the way that other 3.5s mean 3.5. It's all different, right?
And Palm, and that mirrors well with kind of what Palm talks about with rods, because you hear these brands coming out with like a 4-pound, 4.5-pound test curve rod and fishing.
Broomstick.
And you're fishing in these lakes without current. I'm like, I don't know how people, if they're using braid even, I don't know how they're getting these fish in because there's just not a lot of flex in that rod. I understand you can cast a country mile, but you can do that just the same with a 3-pound or less test curve rod. You just have to be balanced, like Ian's saying here. As long as you have a balanced kit to do the job, that it'll work. Which
absolutely.
Here we go. Here's another good question. Here's what kind of reels are we using now? It's funny. This I gleaned off of you from a conversation back in the days, because we do get a lot of questions about kind of what to use, and I kind of grew up using bait runners, but something you said to me a long time ago is that bait runners are good, they have their place, but they also have a lot of parts. So there is that piece where things could go wrong because there's a lot of mechanisms, and we get a lot of I guess non-Shimano bait runners because of that pattern. You can have some issues, and I fished a lot of Akuma Avenger bait runners, and if the reel handle wasn't in the right position, the bait runner would never engage, even though you flip that switch. So I've had to jump in the water after my rod a few times over the years. So eventually I switched over to the I guess a quick drag system or front drag system, and I've upgraded since, and I love it.
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you with confidence there, Anthony, that I have bait runners, I have big pit quick drag reels, and I look up at that assortment up there, and the smallest bait runner I have is probably about a 6,000 Shimano size by today's standards, but it's the Shimano 450. So I have some of the original bait runners because they're bomb-proof reels. Their line lay's not so great. The drag is but those gears inside there are gonna go in long after Keith Richards is dead. So it's amazing. But yeah, most of my stuff is big pits. It is just one less component to go wrong, right? And I mean, these fish just bite so freaking hard, Anthony. And having big pit reels gives you that ability to have a larger central worm gear and drive shaft, and you're not getting that torquing. So something that was really interesting was back in the day, I remember someone came out here with the Daiwa Bassiers, one or the other, the ones with the really long, like surf fishing style spools, and they went up against the St. Lawrence carp, and they actually bent the main drive shaft fighting a fish because it was so much torque pulling as that drag, as they couldn't lock up the drag anymore. Like there was just like if they locked it up any further, it was just going to pull that spool right over to the side of the bail arm. Like it was that intense. So shorter Shimano style, like the shorter big pit style is definitely better because it kind of keeps everything tight and compressed, and you're not putting something out at a long distance for it to become more vulnerable and more prone to bending. But yeah, I've seen it happen and seen reels go knocking after a couple of sessions in the Otonabee. And that's not to bash Daiwa either. No. It's not Daiwa's fault. It's just that's when you're fighting in a river up against a 30-pound fish and it decides it's going to go downstream, you're not going to convince it otherwise. You got to let that go.
And generally, like we get a lot of questions about, look, how do you start carp fishing in Canada? And whenever I'm talking to people, I just let them know, I'm like, okay, make sure to start out, obviously it can be a bit expensive to get into. So if you are going to get started, kind of use your biggest spinning reel you can. Just understand that after a full season, you might have burnt out the gears in your reel or caused some damage based on some of the runs that you may encounter. But we have a good question here from Ian, and he's saying, for any of us Brits that are interested, what do we need to do to come to Canada to fish with you guys? And that goes into our topic and our agenda about your guide service. So why don't we transition into that, and you can start.
Sure. Yeah. Well, Ian, you need nothing other than a fishing license because I've got everything and then some. I'm a bit of what you might call a tackle tart, and I have a ridiculous collection of rods. It's all up there, and my rods are for everyone to use. So I've got rods that are, that I call my guide rods, right? But I also have rods that, if it came down to it, if I'm out with you guys for a tutorial or I'm out for a guided excursion and it's going to be multiple days and in multiple spots, I'll be bringing my rods too. Come on now, you got to have a couple. And if my rod goes before those guide rods goes, it's yours, right? So, you don't have to bring anything. You can literally just roll up and we can make something happen. Right, we've got lots of spots. Peterborough Carping Guides is my business. You can see my flag behind me here. I can give you a little. Hold on a second. Peterborough Carping Guides. So it's been something, a passion of mine for a number of years as a teacher. It just became natural that I would also become a fishing guide. Very passionate about the outdoors, about conservation, and so I was. It definitely it became a very natural transition, and I get to teach under the moon and stars and the beautiful sunshiny days,
Yep.
as well as under fluorescent tubes. So,
And
it's quite nice.
and you got all the gear. We got mats, we got tripods, we've got bivvies, you've got bed systems, you've got pretty much almost anything that the UK has to offer here. Next
I
to
just keep getting more crap, right? But it's like a lot of it is like people from the UK. They're like, yeah, this is an old bivvy I have. Could you use it for your guide service? And I go, yeah. They're like, oh, well, you just need to replace a pole on it. Okay, right? I just
yeah.
go down to the tent supply, get another pole, and I've got a bivvy. And I, like it's one of them, right? I just keep finding these deals. I keep finding. It's like
The
the universe keeps giving this to me, and I'm like, all right, I get it. I have to
for
keep on
yeah
this.
for
Yeah.
the limited amount of gear that's available here, you seem to find it at every garage sale you go
Oh,
to.
dangerous. Keep me away from garage sales. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's bad. It's
Um,
bad.
but yeah, Ian, really, really for anybody, it's once you get here, it's either, I don't know if we can arrange somebody to pick you up, otherwise you can rent a car, we can get you where you need to go, and then if we talk in advance, try to set you up with maybe some accommodations. Will does have some overnight swims that can happen. They just need to be arranged kind of in advance, and then we will definitely have a area pre-baited in advance of you showing up, and make sure that you're always on fish. Plus, Will has about a trillion spots to choose from, so there's always a backup spot on the backup spot on the backup spot if needed. Okay,
I
what
got a
else we
message here. It
got?
looks like Anthony has a question about a license. I'm actually just realizing I can actually see the comments too. I tapped on it when I
Okay,
accidentally when I was shifting my thing around. So
if
Anthony
you
was
want
asking
to,
about how much a license costs for a
I'll look it
week.
up right now. I'll look it up right now
Yeah,
if you
it's
want
not that
to
bad,
move on to
honestly,
something
Anthony.
else.
It's
Yeah.
like you're considered a non-Canadian, obviously. So there's a different price for that versus a Canadian resident. So someone from out of province coming over, like say from Quebec or whatever, they would have a different rate. But I think you can get a week-long conservation license, and I don't think it's more than, is it more than $60?
No,
Galen?
I think it was like last time I looked it up, I think it was around like 32, but I just would like to, that came out last time and I didn't really have a good answer, so I just want to
Yeah,
look that up.
yeah, non-Canadian resident, week-long conservation. Yeah, I don't think it's that bad, but yeah, you'll have to confirm that one. And it's just
Yeah,
a
it's
piece of
different.
paper, or it comes in as a PDF. What was that?
It'll be different per province too, like depending on
Oh yeah.
where you're going, but where we're based in Ontario is pretty good.
Yep. Well, while that's happening, man, I'm just going to ask you a question because we've kind of talked about my guide service now. We bounced around between a couple of topics. I love this. We've kind of talked about the biggest hurdles when encountering rivers, but so your underwater content is so much more than just entertainment, right? It is entertaining. It's painstaking to do with you, but it's also very entertaining. But it has incredible educational value, right?
Yes.
So for you, what's some of the most fascinating behavior you've observed underwater, with regards to like pods of fish, individual fish? What's like, the floor is yours. What is the coolest things you've ever seen?
So I think I had this one fish that kept coming around and then picking up, or not picking up my stone, but like nosing at my stone or mouthing my stone, because at that point I had been soaking them in my corn water. So it seemed to particularly like this stone. So that was a neat behavior. But I've seen it a lot, unfortunately, when I first started doing this, which was a huge rude awakening, was the fish clearing me out. So literally they'd come in and eat every single kernel of corn around my hook bait as they knew something was up with what I'd been using. So that was eye-opening. And then seeing my rig get ejected about 10 or 9 times before actually getting a hook up, that was eye-opening. So I made a huge change after that.
That was that the fish I took a picture of.
It was.
Yeah, that was a beautiful fish, but man, it must have been the dumbest one of the bunch because you were getting done in that video series. That was wild.
It was cool to see, and it changed my fishing kind of forever. I ended up talking to Palm and a few other people and adjusting, and it ended up winning a tournament literally the week after that session. For the Canadian Carp Society. And then
it was insane.
I guess it's funny how the fish's behavior and how they I guess come in as either individuals or as a school, and what they're doing. So we get a lot of times where the fish will come in, they'll grab a mouthful, leave. They'll circle back, grab a mouthful, leave. Or they'll come in and start feeding kind of competitively. If one spooks, they all take off. Or you get the dream circumstances, which is what everybody wants to try to get, is that competitive feeding where they're all after that food, and it almost doesn't matter what you're using, they're going to pick it up. So it's cool to see the different, I guess, feeding behaviors, and certain feeding behaviors, it lends to whether or not the fish are going to be difficult, I guess, to catch. And that's what everybody experiences every time they go out, but they don't necessarily see. So
right.
I find in particular when there's like a single fish coming in on your bait, if they're wary and if they're just like pecking away at the food, they're almost impossible to catch because they're just so on high alert. What about you? I know you did a bunch last year. What was some of the cool observations you had seen?
Well, obviously, for those of you who followed the mission, the hurdles, if you did on my YouTube channel, you would have seen that I didn't have the Markham that you have, where you have the live view and everything. So I wouldn't even know what was happening until I'd go back and watch those half-hour clips, because it would be half-hour cut off, half-hour cut off. That's how that filming went. And I'd go back and watch these films and just be blown away by like, oh my God, there was 10 fish in here. Right? Like, I didn't even get a single bump. What is happening, right? And you'd watch how these fish would meticulously come in and kind of just go back and forth, and they'd take off and they'd come back and forth, especially on the rivers, right? They would just kind of cycle in and they would feed on the precipice of the bait line. And then as soon as they'd start getting closer and closer, they would start getting more and more cautious. And you're just like, oh, God damn it, right? Like you'd be tapping your fingers and like scratching your head going like, what, if I had to put that rig out like another couple of feet further, would that have done it, right? Is the camera making a subsonic sound that you and I can't hear, but with the medium of water, is that perhaps, making them not want to go near it? But then you have that theory, and then like you're seeing how far away they are. They don't want to come within 3 feet of the camera, and then one would just go whoop right in front of the screen. You're like, okay, so clearly that one didn't care. So like, you make all these assumptions, you make all these theories, and then, you kind of sit back and, once again, you're still scratching your head. You're like, what is going on, right? So it's super, super cool. I love doing that. But, yeah, watching the fish's behavior was absolutely fascinating. It's one of the coolest things about that, and it's humbled me. It's
Oh
absolutely
yeah,
humbled
me
me.
too. Me too.
Yeah, did you get an
100%.
answer there for
I
the
did.
about the cost?
Yeah, so anybody that's coming over for, I guess, a week, it's an 8-day sport license
Oh, they
is
don't have the
50,
conservation anymore.
looks like they're just offering oh nope, 8-day conservation license is $31.
Wow, look at that.
So
$31
that's nothing.
Canadian, so it's like 20 pounds, 20 pounds sterling,
Yeah.
roughly.
And then
Something in
you're
that department. That's not bad at all, right? So for 20 pounds sterling, you guys can fish anywhere in Ontario for 8 straight days.
and all the conservation license versus a sport license mean is that if you decide to actually keep some fish, if you're going to target some other species to keep for a meal, you're just limited to how many you can keep.
Yeah,
Um,
and you have to be attentive to regulations. So if you guys come over, don't worry about that. Galen and I have you covered. We'll make sure that you guys don't end up putting yourself in a position where a CEO will absolutely break your knees. So
yeah,
it won't
they
happen.
are they are generally super nice to us anyway.
Oh yeah.
Here you go. Here's a good one for our river rig. So Cliff Dixon, who we've chatted with actually a few times now, he was saying that on the rivers, what length of hook length do you guys use? Is this different to your lake setup?
Ooh, that is a good question. I'll let you go first on that one, Galen, and I'll
Okay.
follow in your coattails.
So I try not to think about it too much, to be honest. I usually tie rigs between kind of that 5 and maybe 7 inches. It just depends. I've got one of the Pallatrax rig boards, so I just keep
Mm.
to kind of the length of well, what's on there. I can't even remember. I don't have it. I have it somewhere, but I can't remember what that was. And I have even a rig board where I keep my rigs, or a piece of foam that I just try to keep it, yeah, within that 5 or 6 inches. But it doesn't seem to make a huge difference unless you want to fish like a method ball where you're tucking the rig in or around. But just for ease sake, I try to tie my rigs kind of same length and what's been working on underwater, and it's always kind of like a personal decision. I've heard of people using in current kind of longer rigs so that when you cast out, the rig will come down and kind of settle better. So I think it's a lot more personal preference, but you may have a different opinion because I just try not to think too much into
You know,
it.
you know what, Galen? I think for me, I have uh, my longest rigs are 12 inches. That's as long as I'll go. All right. So when I'm fishing the rivers, I find that if I'm going to fish the method, then 6 inches is my happy place. If I'm fishing something where I'm going to be casting an individual somewhere, maybe a little a PBA stringer or whatever, having that little bit of extra length of like 12 inches means that I don't have the line coming down at maybe an aggressive angle too close. It's a little
Right.
further away. But most of the time when we're fishing, that almost doesn't matter. It's not quite as intense as the UK where you get a liner, it bumps into the line and it doesn't come back for the rest of the week, right? Like it's not quite like that here.
Right.
You could be sitting there getting liner after liner after liner after liner after liner, and you can watch it on the underwater camera because you and I have sat and watched it. They're just hitting it with their fins, slapping it with their tails, and they're not always too they're not laissez-faire about it for sure, but they're
Yeah.
not too bothered by it. They'll just kind of cycle around and come back again, and they'll usually just come back a little further out. And yeah, I mean, it's 12 inches is as long as I actually think you need to go in the rivers. There may be obviously extenuating circumstances. Some places maybe you would vow for something a little bit longer, but I don't. I feel like the longer something is, the more chance that something's going to go wrong, right? Because you
Yep.
now have potentially a lot of things for it to lay over, get all caught up in. The closer it is to my weight, I actually feel it's safer. I might just be my own personal preference as well, though. So
Yeah, and Ian's mentioning here, like for like barbel fishing, like they can use 18 to 3 foot long kind of leaders for their rig length. And I get where
dear
you're
Lord,
coming from
that's a
with that
long rig.
because a lot of times you're fishing the rods way up in the air. You have a straight line or tight line straight to your weight. Um,
Yeah.
when I fish in the margins, I'll fish back leads or back weights just so
Yep.
that I have it pinned down so that and that's mainly with filming, just because I don't want the fish to spook off. I want to try to make sure that I'm kind of limiting fish scaring other fish, I guess you could say. So I
Absolutely.
um I'm
Back
not
weights are
too
huge in
worried.
the river. They're huge in the
Yeah, they
river
do
too for
help.
boats and stuff too. If you got boats coming in and fishing, you get a lot of bass boats and stuff too. They're just coming down with their trolling motors and they're just passing along the shore. They don't always see you.
Yeah.
They're starting to figure out who we are now, and they realize they probably shouldn't mess with us because we've got 400 yards of
The
line that could go around their props. But they give us a little bit of space and grace now. But definitely having your lines down, when boats are coming through and they don't see you, that it serves two purposes. It means that your lines aren't getting picked up and dragged by the props or anything like that. Boats that are trolling over you too they're not picking you up, but also you're limiting the number of interactions with the fish hitting your lines too. So
Yeah, and I
yeah,
know we end up kind of reducing that like instant feedback or better, I guess, sensitivity by doing that. But
yeah,
again, I've been it you generally know when these fish are going to take off, and you can
it
always you can always
it's
count on we can always count on if we're fishing with Dan or Brendan to catch a kayak or a
oh
rowboat
yeah,
or
yeah, oh yeah,
anything
they're
like that. So we'll just let them
famous.
deal with it.
Yeah, we'll let them take the boats out and we'll catch the fish. Yeah, no, like here in Canada, it's so funny, right? Because I've watched these twitchy runs where you're like, "Is it a fish?" And on these UK videos, you're just sitting and watching. Is that a fish? Are they taking it? And then you see instead here in Ontario, it's like it picks it up and it one tones down river.
Yeah,
And I've seen
90% of
like
the time.
yeah, my buddy Paul. I remember my buddy Paul, his Delcom, like the line melted through the side of his up the upper uprights of his Delcom. He has a Delcom that has a line cut into it from one of these runs, and it was the livid common, which I think you've had or maybe Brendan had. I don't remember who had it,
Yeah,
but the,
yeah,
the
Brendan
livid, the
did.
one that
Yeah,
has a little almost looks like someone took a hole punch to its dorsal spine, just a little
yeah.
hole. But that fish melted through the side of a Delcom. Like there's no question when we get a run on the river, it's just gone,
I
right? Like
know.
it's insane.
I'm surprised Vince hasn't gone through more alarms, to be honest, based on what happens off his dock, because he
It's
gets a lot
insane.
of one-toners.
Yeah, and you mean you could put your line slack, you could put your line tight. It doesn't matter. Once it straightens out, it's absolutely belting off. So yeah, using the back weights, yeah, you may lose a little bit of indication, but I've often found that I don't set into too many fish that are not there, right? And oftentimes, if I've got a back weight down and that line's running, the fish is on. But I've had other times where line's not back weighted down, it's on an angle. The fish has gotten into it with its dorsal and it's done a like weird floppy thing or whatever, and it's gotten hung up on it, and then it makes a big mess and a lot of noise, and you think you got a fish on, and you set it, and literally this rig just comes right at you, right? And you're like,
Yep.
that's weird. And it's the rig hasn't moved. The rig hasn't moved. The line has moved on this side of the weight, right? So, and we have to use those big weights in the river too. So it takes a little bit to move them, right? We were using 2.5 plus 3 ounce, even 4 ounce weights back in the day, depending on the current speed and whatnot. So, here's a question for you, sir.
Yes.
With all of your experience with how fish approach in rivers, so obviously in a river, 95% of the time they're coming upstream, right? The very rare time you see them come downstream and pick something up, but they're coming upstream. What kinds of considerations are there for rigs based on the way that fish approach a rig in a river, usually coming upstream to it? What kinds of things do you have to consider?
So, honestly, I think that the biggest thing that I've found that is outside of like underwater is that it is really key to feel that rig and weight coming down and hitting, because you want and even if you're using method, you can pull back a little bit just so that your weights here and your rig comes down like this. So yeah, having even those longer rigs does help with it come down in the current so that it's putting away or sorry pulling away from your weight or not getting tangled up. I had a lot of issues when I started because I used Power Pro, just braid as a hook link material. So
Mm,
I'd end up with a lot of tangles. So using a stiffer material has really helped me because it kicks away. So I know when I cast out, I'm feeling it down that my bait's gonna kick away. And if I'm using a pop up, generally my weight's gonna come down first and then it'll kick back. So that's one of the biggest things that I've kind of taken away from fishing within the river. And then um, clipping up does help. So if we are spotting out at a distance, obviously you're gonna get a lot of carry with whatever you're baiting up. with. Sometimes I'll put method balls in my spot, or I'll launch method balls out with my baiting spoon, so I know that it's falling in one area a little more consistently, depending on particle and the current.
Mhm.
So yeah, it can be difficult getting a rig in place, but again, using method or PVA, at least you know you have something in there, and then generally the feed that you put in has at least brought the fish in the area, and they'll find it. So they're constantly moving around. Like with river fish, they're always feeding, they're
Absolutely.
always nose down, and they're
Yeah.
always. You're right. They do. You could really outfish somebody if you take the downstream side of them. If you're fishing in a swim on the river, it has
No, and you
happened
know
from
what
time to
though? But
time.
it does sometimes backfire because then they suddenly become really weary of downstream and then they move upstream and then you're quiet. You go quiet for a number of hours, right? It's fun how that works. I've had sessions on the river where you're downstream and you start smashing it up. You have 4 or 5 fish and you feel really good, and then all of a sudden it just goes quiet and your buddy
Yeah,
upstream is absolutely smashing it up and you're like, wow, right?
yeah,
And then all of a sudden that shuts down and then you suddenly start getting those liners again. You're like, oh, they're back, right? And it'll go back and forth and back and forth. Very exciting stuff. That's why the river is always so exciting. And you can be sitting there getting a liner and you're sitting on the edge of your bed chair staring at the rod like, go. And it's not going to be like a beep beep beep
yeah.
beep 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 and you're like, oh, I have time to put my boots on. Oh, I have time to put on the kettle. No, 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 no. Right? It's gonna go beep beep. Whee! And you're gonna be like panicking, trying to get your head torch
Yeah,
on, right? Throwing your blanket on the ground to get covered in bugs. It's good stuff, right? Then you charge out and you fall in the water chasing your rod, and oh yeah, it's a good time. Anyway, that's why Canadian carp fishing is honestly where it's at. Canadian and North American carp fishing, we're the final frontier. You know what I mean? So um,
there's a lot to
I'm just having a
explore.
look here at my questions. I don't think I have any more questions for you, Galen, man. I
No,
really don't.
I'm just gonna go quickly through. We're running out of time, but I'm just gonna go quickly through what questions were on our when Palm put the post up. There's some comments.
Okay.
I'm just gonna see. We may have covered a lot of these. I
Indeed,
guess
indeed.
you know what the last thing the last thing we could touch on is I guess lead alternatives. So we're starting to see a bit of a change here in regarding carp fishing in Canada, because one of our main providers of carp gear, Carp Kit, they've started to bring in alternatives. So we've got Evolved Tackle now available to Canadian residents, plus your mortars yourself, and we've even encouraged people. We did have stones here at one point, but I don't think that's continued just with Carp Kit, because I just don't think it was selling, even though we're promoting it. There's still people still stuck in their ways of using traditional setups. So, but it looks like now, after a good probably 3 years, the mindset has changed, because you're getting a lot more orders with your mortar systems that you're selling. So the concrete weights as an
Yeah,
alternative, which is really cool
yeah.
to see.
I'm the only guy in Canada doing it, to my
Yeah.
knowledge. I don't think there's anybody else that's doing it. And I mean, like, when I saw the opportunity, I was inspired, right? 2023 was really when the genesis of the thought came to mind, the end of 2023, because I was having a really crappy year. I was in pursuit of one fish and wasn't catching it, and wasn't catching many fish at all on that section. It was a real challenge. And so, in those times where you sit and you think and you're stuck in your thoughts, you kind of just start thinking and brainstorming ideas. And I was watching you and the boys having a grand time with Pallatrax. And at that time, I didn't know that the door was ever going to open for me to join Pallatrax. Which, I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to be a part of the Canadian team and to,
Hmm.
be, here working alongside you and working alongside Vince and Palm and everybody else. It's so wonderful. And um, yeah, so I got the mortars and I started making. I got the 3D prints done up, and it took a little while to figure out the right mix, because
Yep.
boy, oh boy, can the wrong mix dominate your life for a little while. And I found out. I'll tell the secret to everybody here: crystalline silica. Okay, if your silica can't be in a granular form, it has to be in a crystalline form, and this actually makes it hard as a rock, truthfully, and it will handle a lot more tensile and whatnot. And so, yeah, I mean, I've got a few weights actually in front of me because I've got boxes and boxes of orders. But yeah, like these are my tri-lobe mortars, which have been incredibly popular. With the carp fishing community here, because a lot of people like their method or their pack bait fishing, and this shape really does allow for pack bait to be put around it. But I also have my little teardrop shaped weights, which are great for your helicopter and
Yep.
your, your chod fishing, and I've got my flat pairs, which are ideal for the river, right? So
Yep.
I've got the different sizes and the different shapes, and each one of them has their place and their purpose. And so, I think it's good that people have started to embrace the idea, and I've had a lot of orders already for this year, which is great. People like the idea of them being that you can have another element to your
Yep.
rigging system that can take on attractants, right? So now you can throw one of these guys glug that you've left glug for some time, or in a liquid of some kind that is water based, and you throw it out, and you don't even have to throw out method now. You've got something like you said with your stone that was left in the corn juice. It's
Yep.
taking on that attractant, and the fish are taking interest in that. And by nature, if you've only got something 6 inches away, that just increases the chances of
Yeah,
an
exactly.
interaction, right? So, yeah, and I mean, evolve, like anything we can do to change the narrative of,
Yes.
like, lead is dead, folks. It really is. Like, yeah, a lot of people are still using it, a lot of companies are still promoting it, but the clock is ticking on it. I think they know that as well, and so they're
Yeah.
really trying to push all this product out to get it away from them, because then it's not their responsibility anymore. And so I think that pushing your local tackle shops to start looking into Evolve, to start looking into Dinsmore's offers shot that are non-toxic.
Yep.
It doesn't just have to be Pallatrax. And
No.
I think that's the thing. Don't try to tell people there's only one solution, because that's going to make people feel like it's some sort of gimmick. Whereas instead of you say, listen, we just have to open our eyes to
Yep.
the damaging effects of lead, right? Like, here's a question for you, right? Do you want something like this falling in your lake that in about 40 or 50 years will be nothing but powder? Or would you like to have a chunk of lead in your water that's going to be there for thousands of years,
Yeah.
slowly leaching off neurotoxins,
Uh,
affecting soil quality, hurting the fish, hurting the bird life? I think the choice is very simple. And yeah, maybe it's a little bit bigger, but the fish don't care. It's a rock,
yeah.
right?
And
So
what I really like too is that because we have mortars and we have all tackle, they are in the standard shapes and sizes that generally most carp anglers use, and it's a really easy transition if somebody's kind of wavering, which is really nice because sometimes it's hard to sell that stone, even though we all know the benefits of stones, and we use them. It
it's a
it's
rock.
still a mindset, right? Like there's still
Oh,
a mindset. Anglers are superstitious. Anglers are set in their ways. So
yeah.
it's definitely a great way of giving that transition into that next piece. And I even wrote an article for the Canadian Carp Society, just showing people how to create their own uh, stone weights. Just because we can't necessarily get the Pallatrax ones here, people may as well be able to take advantage and do it themselves if they want to take that next step to do
Absolutely.
that. So it's nice to see a bit of a change. It is definitely going to be a slow process, but I think it's nice being kind of at the forefront and just promoting this kind of new narrative and new mentality, and I think we'll be better for it.
I think the world will be a better place for it. And I think it's really exciting when, I get more and more people that are messaging me and saying, like, this was a really good one. I was talking to you about this gentleman, Benedict, who reached out and he ordered about $30 worth of weights from me, which is about, say, 15 to 20 weights, depending on the sizes if people were looking to order. But anyway, he ordered them, and he said that he belongs to a sort of a conservation authority, not like a steward, like a
Yep.
stewardship. Um, and so he said that prior to the banning of lead shot, because the lead shot is banned here for bird hunting, he said that there were only 18 nesting bald eagles for like thousands of acres of this wooded area that was overseeing the water. And then he said that it took about 2 decades after the ban, but he said that, the stewards in the area plus him, they watched as that number grew up to 80. And he says he can't help but think that there was a correlation there, that the things that these birds are feeding on, these predatory birds are feeding on, whether that be other birds, whether that be goslings of geese and such that might be harvesting and picking up these leads, the fish that are in those environments, right? Like, the simple fact of the matter is that, when we started considering, what we were putting into our waterways and whatnot, still there's lots of things that we have to sort of figure out
Yeah.
there. But, I think that it's amazing that he said that, and then he said, and then I thought I might be able to apply that to my fishing, and then he saw my mortar weights. So I mean, anything if we can be there to intercept those people, and like as a guide, right? I meet a lot of people that are new into angling,
Yeah,
and if
exactly.
they went off the industry and what the industry was telling them, they would be picking up a lead from a 3 ounce chunk of neurotoxin to throw into the water. And instead, if I can catch them and say, actually, I've got a weight that will be able to take on a method, and this is it right here. We can use this guy instead, and in 30 to 50 years, that'll be broken down completely, and it will be nothing more than you know
Yeah,
cement. It'll be cement powder basically, which will join the substrate, and it will cause no harm. Or you can throw out a neurotoxin. The choice is yours. And so I
yeah,
think it's great. We're getting these alternatives, and I'm excited to see how well they do. I hope Simon continues to stock these evolve weights as long as we can try to push. And I think everybody needs to push the idea of it's not about it's not about a product. It's about an ethos.
yes,
It's not about a
yeah,
product. It's about a mindset. It's about telling people that the stones work, the mortars work, the evolve works just as well as the leads work, but with far fewer consequences.
yeah,
And why wouldn't we want to make this something that is sustainable? It was left here for us to enjoy. We should leave it for tomorrow.
yeah. 100%
Yeah.
with you. And I think on that note, I think that might be a good one to end it on. We're
Yeah.
past that
If
hour
anybody
mark,
has any
and
last minute questions, we can definitely take them. But yeah, we've run over an hour. But if there's any last minute
it's,
questions,
I guess,
Galen, the weather's getting nicer here. We're almost
yeah,
we're almost there.
yeah. Believe it or not, there's blue sky, and I think it's 15 degrees. Okay, I'll address this one question real quick, and
Okay.
it is from Graham Young, and he says, "Well, how did we get involved in Pallatrax?" And for me, it was I ended up. It's nice when social media is used correctly, when the way it was supposed to be used. Long story short, I ended up putting a video on Facebook, one of the big Facebook carp fishing groups, and I had been using my own stone weights. And what ended up happening was our friend Rich Shaw, who you've all know, messaged me and said, "You know what? There's a team here that you'll probably be interested in, and they would love to see this type of content." So I just joined the team, just like everybody else here, and then ended up having a lot of conversations with Palm on my own. Palm's so personal, and he literally was really interested in kind of what I was doing, and he brought me on to help run some of their social media, and it's kind of grown from there. And Will has also gone on a bit of a journey himself about obviously about getting rid of lead out of his fishing. So he was a very good fit into this as well, and we're very happy to have him on. You can talk for yourself, though, and tell your story of how you got on if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, like the day that you said to me, like, there's always going to be a place here if you want it. Like, we're all these guys all from the Peterborough region, right? And it was just like, it just seemed very natural. I was watching how well you guys fish together, and I mean, we're coming out of COVID. We're finally kind of getting back into the
Yeah.
swing of things and going on these socials again. And it was just like, it just felt so natural to be able to go out and fish with you again because it had been a while, right? Because you had
Yep.
newborn, I had a kid, and everything. So I mean, and then to come back together and join forces, right? A dynamic duo
Yep.
once again, getting out there, and that was something so special, right? So I mean, I'm eternally grateful for you for introducing me to this wonderful, wonderful company and to this incredible team. We are honestly at the forefront of change, and I'm always someone. I'm that person that would happily throw up my fist and go raw raw when change is needed. And I think that if you're here now, you're a part of this team, you're watching this video, then just know that you're doing something that will leave a better tomorrow. And yeah, thank you guys all for inviting us on here and for inviting me to be a part of this. I'm eternally grateful.
Yeah, it's nice having a bunch of like-minded anglers and a really nice community. This is a great community. Everybody is so respectful and everybody wants to learn. That's the whole point of this. And just very thankful that yeah, Palm and Tinny brought us on to kind of help spread the good word, and hopefully we can inspire others to kind of make that change, or just kind of do better, or just something different in their angling. I think they'll catch a lot more fish for doing so. So
Absolutely. Adam's saying everybody should follow the TikTok. If you don't follow
Oh
the team, the
yes.
Pallatrax TikTok, get on that. Adam is working his butt off. He's doing an amazing job. Get your stuff in there. And, if you've got any great videos that you want to share with us, get in touch with him, and he can most certainly get your content shared on that social platform. And definitely, if you're not following Galen of ONT Carping, what are you
Yes.
doing with your life? You need to be following Galen. And I mean, if you want to drop me a follow too, I'll
Yeah.
take your follows too. But yeah, this has been a great time, buddy. And Ian said we smashed it. Someone else said that he could listen all night. Oh, Steve Bryan said he could listen all night. Trust me, I could go all night, buddy. I could go. Give me a
Oh yeah.
coffee. I'll be up all night talking all kinds of nonsense. But if you guys have any questions for Galen or myself, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to us on the Team Pallatrax page. You can find us. We're posting fairly frequently, so send us a message if you have any questions. And I like to tell Galen all the time that even though we may be an ocean away, we may have something that you might be able to apply on your waters, and maybe it'll help you catch as well. Because at the same
Definitely.
time, we're all fishing for the same fish.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, thanks everybody for joining us. Really appreciate it. Great conversations. Thanks so much, Will, and thanks, Palm, for having us on. And we are probably going to look to do this again in probably maybe next month, and I don't know, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, something like that. We'll find a weekend and we'll hop back on. And by then, maybe we'll be on the bank. Who knows? We're in
Maybe.
March. Maybe not. We'll see
We're
though.
definitely going to do a live from the bank, though,
Yeah.
sometime, and let these lovely people hear a Canadian carp run, because, oh, yeah, right? They need it. They need it. I need it.
Okay.
Take
On
care,
that
guys.
note, take care. Thanks everybody. And again, questions, just let us know and we'll talk to you later.